Well, welcome back to the podcast. I am tickled pink as always to be with you. And today I am finally diving into a topic that has come up. This topic just has a way of coming up in casual conversations, in conversations I have with clients, and just here and there. And I'm like, you know what? Today we're going to talk about it. And the topic is blood types. Blood types. Have you heard about this? Have you heard somebody talk about their blood type and because their blood type is this or that, they need to do this and they don't eat that and they consider that their blood type might make a difference in their daily stuff? Have you heard of this? I recently was in a conversation. It was a social conversation and it just came up. And the person said, "Do you really think there's something to that?" And I said, "Well, you know what? I do think there's something to it. I think that some people can kind of get snaggled in some of the details. But what I wanted to do today here on this episode is just kind of take a 30,000-foot view of blood types and share some things with you that might be helpful. And that's always, of course, the goal of any podcast episode that I deliver to you is I hope it might be helpful. So let's dive into blood type. First of all, everybody has a blood type. You are either an a B, an AB, or an O. So O is easily the most common blood type, but and I think AB is the least common, but everybody's got a blood type. And if you're not sure what your blood type is, let me just hit that first before we go any farther. If you're listening and you're like, how can I tell what my blood type is? You can order a blood typing kit off of Amazon. Isn't that wild? What can we not get off Amazon? I'm not sure. Maybe puppies, right? But if you're not sure of your blood type and you'd like to know so that you can take the information I share today and apply some of it, then you can just order a blood typing kit off of Amazon. And I will share that there is another way that you can kind of give it a good guess based on what you see in the mirror. Now, this is about 70% accurate, okay, with someone who is skilled in identifying it. And maybe this is the best part to mention, this is not medical advice, this is education, okay? So just know, use this to bless you in any way that it's helpful and do not use this as medical advice, okay? But when you're looking at yourself in the mirror, you'll notice that your face has a shape. If your face is round, if you're watching on YouTube right now and you look at my face is round. It is actually round whether I'm at my current weight or even if I weigh less. I always have a round face, and my round face is kind of shaped like the letter O. Okay, well, guess what? I am also an O blood type. If you look at your face and your chin is more narrow and then like your face kind of gets wider up at the top, you might be an A blood type. An A blood type face is kind of like an upside down A. Okay, so if your chin is narrow and then your face kind of gets wider toward the top, you might be an A blood type. If you look to your profile and your face appears more flat, it's not convex, it's not rounded out, it's not really rounded in, it's just kind of a flat profile, then you might be a B blood type. And if you are an AB blood type, you could either have that narrow chin and wider face or a flatter profile or none of that at all. Okay, remember, it's only about 70% accurate. But even as a practitioner, sometimes I will ask someone, I typically often ask a client, do you know what your blood type is? And if they don't, I will make an educated guess and also suggest you might want to blood type yourself if this is something that you want to apply to your personal wellness. All right, well, let's talk about the different types and what in the world does it even matter what your type is. So I want to just preface by saying This is something that was introduced to me, this concept of blood typing and different foods that we might want to consider and activities we might want to consider. This was introduced to me several years after I started practicing alternative or complementary wellness. Okay. So when I first heard about it, like you probably might be at this moment, I felt skeptical. But with time, I kept hearing other practitioners that I have a lot of respect for who were wiser and more experienced than I referencing this blood type thing. And I was like, do you think there's really something to that? Like you may be asking right now. And time and again, they said, there is something to it. And so I read a book. The book's called Eat Right for Your Type. And the number four, the four in there is actually the number four. So eat right, the number four, your type. Very, very interesting. Let me just say this right now. That book is written from a worldview that I don't share. Okay. The writer of that book believes in the idea of evolution. And I don't think that way. But I'm not throwing out all the bath, I'm not throwing out the baby with the bathwater on this one, because some of the principles he shares I have found to be very true. But there's another book, if you're like, well, I don't want to read that. There's another one called Blood Types, Body Types, and You. And that one is written from a Christian worldview. And so if you prefer that, that might be a better book for you if you want to read more about this. Blood Types, Body Types, and You. I actually like both books for different reasons. And so if you hear this today and you think, girl, I want to know more, I have just shared with you two resources you can go easily find on Amazon and get into those and just go super nerdy. But again, today I'm going to take the 30,000 foot view and we're going to dive right in. Let's talk about A blood types. A blood types in general tend to be more gentle people. If you're married to an A blood type, you may go, I don't know about that. This person's pretty spicy. Okay, it doesn't mean that it's categorically 100% confidently certain all the time, but there is something to it. In general, the A blood type tends to be a bit more gentle in their overall temperament. I have seen this time and again, and I love it. I think it's fascinating. A blood types will feel better when they avoid certain foods. And the certain food, the biggest one, I'm not going to go into all of them because there are long lists, okay? We're going to hit the highlights here. A blood types will feel better when they avoid this one particular food, and that is beef. Beef. I remember years ago, I had a client. Gosh, I love her. Very sweet, very gentle person. She was having some inflammation in her body. She was actually not feeling well. She was having some digestive issues. And I suggested that she stay away from beef for about 7 days. I said, how about you just, if you don't, I know you may not think there's anything to this, but what if you just stay away from it for about 7 days and then you go have yourself some brisket or a steak? My mouth's watering just talking about it. Go have some of that and then pay attention to how you feel. So she went a whole week without beef. She wasn't sure if she could do it, but she did it. And then she had some steak. And she said it was like one of the best steaks she'd ever had because she hadn't had anything like that in a week. And then she noticed her joints started hurting. She noticed that those digestive issues that had disappeared over the past week were back. She noticed that she just didn't feel good. But surely it wasn't the brisket. And I said, well, try avoiding, don't have any more beef for 3 days. Give it a good chance to get out of your bloodstream and then have some more and see how you feel. Because, when you're skeptical, sometimes you need a little confirmation. And sure enough, she avoided it for 3 days. She had it again. She felt badly again. And she's like, no. I'm like, okay, so beef is just one food. There's so many other wonderful foods in the world. It doesn't mean you never eat beef again. It means that now you have an awareness that it affects you differently. And you didn't realize that you could actually address all this host of issues that have been bugging you by staying away from beef. So that is A blood types. They do well to stay away from beef. And as far as like exercise goes, they do best with gentle exercises. Things like yoga and Pilates, walking, as opposed to running. When they lift weights, they may find that it's harder for them to build bulky muscles, but they can, but they will overall, they'll do better with a gentle stretching using body weight for resistance and things like that. So that's the A blood type. Next, we're going to talk about the B blood type. Okay, so B blood types. I'm a little biased because I have a daughter who is a B blood type. And you're going to learn a lot about our family genetics as I go through this. But she does best when she avoids, and all Bs do, okay? It's such an easy food to find. It's something that we're told is so healthy, and it is for most people, but maybe not so much the B blood type. B blood types will feel their best when they avoid chicken. Chicken. Okay, well, I am from my home people live in Northwest Arkansas, which is where Tyson Foods, the world's biggest producer of chicken, is located. I grew up in like chicken country, okay? So to learn that my own daughter with a B blood type should not eat chicken, it was like, you got to be kidding me. But when she stays away from it, she feels differently. And my clients have found that too. With the B blood types, a lot of times they will have headaches. They may get migraines. They may have that kind of situation or body aches, things of that nature. And when they stay away from chicken, it's very interesting. They don't feel that headache. They don't feel that puffiness in their body. They notice a difference. Now, B blood types also do well with a gentle exercise, but they can be a little bit more hardy. They're maybe more like, instead of just walking, running. Instead of just lighter weights and body weight, they actually do fine with some weight and resistance training. They're going to do great with things like hiking, which can become very strenuous. As someone who lives in Alaska, and the mountains here are quite large, hiking is actually a big deal. And so a B blood type is going to thrive with some kind of work, some kind of physical activity that really challenges you, but it isn't like a whole lot of extra weight or anything like that. Okay, so that was A. A's stay away from beef and they enjoy gentle activity. B's stay away from chicken and enjoy moderate activity. What about an AB? What about an AB? Well, just as you might suggest or suspect, that's the word I want to use, you might suspect an AB would be a combination of the two, A and B. So if you have an AB blood type, you might do well to avoid both beef and chicken. Okay, so everybody is what's called bio-individual. It means you yourself individually are different than anyone else in the world. And so if you have an AB blood type, I did not just say don't ever eat chicken or beef again. I said you may feel best if you avoid one or both of them. And with time, you may find that experimenting to see how you feel when you try or avoid certain foods. And this doesn't just apply to your blood type, it's everything. When we pay attention to, when I eat this, I feel this way, that is a gift we give ourselves. And so with the AB, avoiding beef and chicken could be helpful. So, okay, I already said I'm an O blood type. My daughter is a B. If you're a genetics person, like if you're interested in how genetics work and all that, you may be going, wait a second, how could your daughter be a B if you're an O? Because my late husband, my daughter's dad, was an AB negative. Very, very rare. It's the rarest blood type, I do believe. He he might have been my introduction to the blood types as far as like in our home for real, how things go down, because he had a long history of migraines. He would get a migraine. Now, I know we joke about a man cold, and when men get any kind of ailment, they can be so pitiful and they can't function. And a woman may have the same thing and she just keeps going. But I'm telling you, I don't have a long history of migraines, but historically, when I would get a migraine, the world needed to stop. I was going to bed, it needed to be dark and quiet, and that's how it was. He would get migraines. My late husband would get migraines, and it was so pitiful. Like, he also, the world had to stop. He had to go to bed. He usually threw up. It was awful. And so he and I, this was when I very first started studying natural health, actually. Um, which is kind of interesting in the timing, because I'm like, I thought that I learned about this after I've been practicing for a while, but in fact, I obviously learned about it before, because I'm just, as I'm telling you the story, this is coming back to mind. And so anyway, he was having these terrible migraines. And so we went to see a naturopathic doctor who was my mentor in Northwest Arkansas. And we went to see him about Tim's migraines. And he sat there, and the naturopath asked some thoughtful questions. And then he said, "What's your blood type?" And Tim said, "Well, I'm an AB negative." And the naturopath said, "Well, then you need to not eat chicken." Okay, well, that was easier than hearing him say you need to not eat beef. Okay, so for Tim, he did better when he stayed away from chicken. Okay, so a little backstory on Tim. He had grown up on a cattle ranch. He grew on cattle ranches, several of them. He was into eating beef, like they raised beef, and he loved to eat beef. So mercifully, he tolerated beef just fine. But when he ate chicken, he would get a migraine. Okay, hearing that the first time, do you think we just swallowed that like, oh yeah, that's how it is now, we know? No, we were skeptical. We went home, we're like, no, it couldn't be chicken. Chicken could not be the problem. But we thought, well, let's go ahead and try it. So we had him stay away from chicken. He didn't eat any chicken, I think, for 3 or 4 days. And he didn't have any headaches, and he felt good. He thought, this is pretty cool. But then he had some chicken, and he got a terrible migraine. We're like, no way, that's just coincidence. So he didn't have chicken again for probably about a week or so, and he felt really well. And then he had some chicken, and he had a migraine, and he was vomiting, and he was miserable. And I was using essential oils and cold compresses, and all kinds of things. And he just did not feel good. So as long as he stayed away from chicken, especially initially, as long as he stayed away from it, he felt really, really better. And then when he would have it, if he hadn't had it in a long time, he might could have it once or even twice and not have issues. But if he got to where he was having it more regularly, he would get a migraine again. And so that was really very interesting to us and very telling. And so the AB blood type, man, I mean, their immune system is different. Their immune system is different. And it just is really worth paying attention to, things like this, like the kind of food you eat and how you feel when you eat them. So the AB physical activities, like they're going to do really well with both the gentle stretching. They also can get pretty intense with their endurance and things like that, but not so much like with heavy lifting, like heavy weightlifting, trying to build bulk and so forth. Their bodies are just a little different. All right, so we talked about A, B, and AB. Now we're going to talk about O, the most common blood type. Now, O's are really interesting, and I'm an O. And oh my goodness, you may be kind of holding your breath and half not wanting to hear the rest of this episode, because you're like, oh my gosh, if the other ones can't have chicken or beef, like what could the O's maybe not be able to have? So I'll start with the good news, okay? O blood types do very well with all kinds of meat. Maybe I'll throw in this little caveat, except pork. Except pork. Turns out all the blood types don't do awesome with pork. Now, if you raise hogs and put you a hog in the freezer every year and that is your livelihood, then there it is. Like that's going to continue to happen, right? But in general, our bodies don't love pork like all bodies. And you may go, well, girl, you have just gone off, you've just gone off to meddling again. Okay. And in general, our bodies do best to avoid pork. Also, to avoid foods that are like bottom feeders or crustaceans. So that would be things like shrimp, snails, things like that. Most bodies will feel best to stay away from those. This makes me think of a few weeks ago, I was at a small group thing with my church. So I started going to a new church. I love it. I absolutely love it. I can't even begin. That should probably be another episode, and I'm serious to talk about this new church and how much I love it. But for now, I'll just say I was at an event, a small group gathering, and one of the guys made ribs. Okay, I'm from the South. You could easily, safely assume that I have eaten ribs before. I had never eaten ribs before. Well, ribs are pork, okay? And I haven't, growing up, in our home, we did not eat pork. When I became an adult, I tried a little bit and I just didn't like it in general. Now, let me be clear, there's pork and there's bacon. In my mind, they're not the same, y'all. I'm serious. There's pork and then there's bacon and there's pepperoni. And I don't think bacon and pepperoni should be considered pork, but they are. I don't have them often, but I will eat them from time to time. But like as far as like pork chops or ribs, I did not eat that growing up, and I haven't eaten it as an adult. So it was very interesting to other people in the gathering a couple weeks ago. So we're like, you've never eaten ribs and you're from Arkansas? I'm like, I know. I don't really know what's wrong with me. But I did try them. They were very delicious. They were smoky. The guy that made them smoked them like all day or whatever. They were delicious. My stomach was not impressed later that night, but they were so yummy. But I just don't eat pork. Okay, so now you know. But let's talk about the O blood type. So O's actually do really well with lots and lots of meat. Like we do well with meat. If you have heard about this new rage or recent rage of the carnivore diet, if you're an O blood type, you are the best blood type to consider a carnivore diet. All right? Not necessarily saying I'm a fan of it, but I'm saying if you're an O blood type, you're going to have the best chance of having success with that. That's going to be sustainable. Your body's going to work with you on that, okay? I'm not saying I recommend it. I do know people who have done the carnivore diet, and man, they feel amazing. They're like, you wouldn't believe how clear your thinking is and how great you feel. And I'm just thinking, how do you poop? How do you poop if all you ever eat is meat and there's no fiber in your diet? I don't understand that. So back to the O blood types. O blood types do well with all kinds of meat. I know I keep saying that because I really don't want to have to tell you the next thing, okay? But O blood types will feel our best when we avoid two significant food groups, if you will. We will feel best when we stay away from wheat, specifically wheat. We could call it gluten, but we're just going to call it wheat in general, okay? O blood types feel best when we stay away from wheat. I am well aware that that includes things like bread, pasta, crackers, cereals, things of that nature. O blood types will feel best when we stay away from wheat. And we will feel best when we stay away from dairy. Dairy, that's like milk. That's like cheese. It's going to be sour cream, cottage cheese, yogurt, all those things that are high protein, low calorie, super popular. Cottage cheese, very much having its day right now, right? It's having its moment. You can make everything with cottage cheese. And cottage cheese is dairy, and O blood types will feel better when they stay away from dairy and wheat. But remember, you can enjoy all the different kinds of meat. Just you'll feel better when you stay away from wheat and dairy. Now, I don't make these rules up. I did not make this up. I'm not saying you have to follow this 100% all the time. I will say I myself, over time, I've gone through phases where I completely stay away from wheat and I feel a difference. Specifically, I myself notice that my joints do not have any pain when I do not eat wheat. And when I eat wheat, it kind of hurts a little bit to go down the stairs. Isn't that weird? Why would that happen? Because for my body, an O blood type, wheat actually fans the flame of inflammation in my body. With the dairy stuff, if you are in a cold season or an allergy season where you might get like mucusy, phlegmy, things of that nature, dairy is going to fuel that. So if you're eating a lot of dairy and you're having like, I just call it snot, okay? If you're having a runny nose, if you're having a productive cough, if you're having a lot of drainage from your sinuses, if you will consider staying away from wheat and dairy, especially dairy, that can be subdued. Isn't that amazing? If you're an O blood type, if you're an A blood type, enjoy the dairy, right? And enjoy the wheat, preferably glyphosate free, but enjoy it. But if you're an O blood type, be aware that those are two food groups, however you want to call that, that can really feed an inflammatory response in your body. And when you get gutsy and you say, all right, I don't even know if I believe this, but I'm going to prove her wrong. I'm open to that. Go ahead and do that. Just don't have it for a little while, and then try having it and see what you notice. Do you feel a difference in your joints? Do you notice that your face is more puffy or less puffy? Do you notice a difference in your brain fog? Like literally all these things I'm describing have to do with inflammation in our body. And according to the blood type theory, if you will, the kinds of food we put into our body based on our blood type is going to impact the inflammatory fires in our body. And there's something to it. Is it 100% for every person ever? No. But is there just enough to it to pay attention to it and try it for yourself? In my opinion, yes. Okay, let's see. We haven't talked about exercise for O blood types, so let me do that. So O blood types really thrive in intense physical activity. Intense. So yeah, we can walk and that's cool, but our body will like it better when we either walk like on an incline at a higher speed, or if we run, not so much running, but like if you run like on an incline. If you hike or do like rock climbing, we do best, like we really thrive lifting heavy weights. Our bodies, an O blood type body, actually needs an intense physical outlet. And I will say that is typically experienced even more so in our mental wellness. If we don't have a physical outlet, O blood types can become quite melancholy. We've got to move our bodies. So if you're listening to this and you're an O blood type and you don't really like to move your body, well, go ahead and move it anyway, because your body likes to be moved. And it really needs that, because our bodies, if we don't move our bodies, and this is everybody, but especially O blood types, with each blood type, there are specific susceptibilities to different kinds of illness. And if we don't move our body as an O blood type, we are more susceptible to issues in our lymphatic issues. It can be things that can express in our skin. We overall, we have the most robust immune system, but as an O blood type, we are more likely to then also experience autoimmune situations. So if you have an autoimmune situation, disease, diagnosis, whatever you want to call it, and you're an O blood type, you might want to give a little bit more consideration to that wheat and dairy thing and consider lifting heavy. It can make a massive difference in your chemistry, in your mental wellness, in how you show up every single day. Oh my goodness gracious. This has been a 30,000-foot view of the blood types. I'm going to take just a moment and run back through a couple of the highlights from each blood type in summary of this episode. And then we'll put a bow on it. So A blood types do best to stay away from beef, and they do well with a gentle exercise using your body weight, things like yoga, Pilates, stretching, breathing, and so forth. Let me be clear, every blood type needs to both stretch and breathe, okay? But, excuse me, the A blood types seem to do better with that, like their bodies just respond to this gentle, flowing dance activity, ballet, just a gentle flowing movement and activity. B blood types will feel best. Most B blood types will feel best when they stay away from chicken. It is so hard to say that. And they will do well with a moderate exercise. So maybe jogging, maybe bicycling, maybe some hiking, things of that nature. AB blood types are a combination of A and B. Some ABs will do better and will feel better to stay away from beef. Some ABs will feel better to stay away from chicken. Some will feel better when they stay away from both. They thrive with lots and lots and lots of vegetables. Oh, I didn't say this before. If you are an A or an AB, you are the best candidate to be a vegetarian. Isn't that interesting? A's and ABs are the best candidates to be vegetarian. If you are an O blood type, you will feel your very best if you avoid dairy and wheat. And you are good to go in eating all kinds of meats, except in general, I'm not a big fan of pork. And O blood types thrive with intense physical activity, pushing yourself, pushing your body. In general, I'm not the world's biggest fan of push yourself and push yourself some more. That doesn't always serve us. It's good to push yourself every now and then, but if you're just constantly pushing yourself, it like emotionally, mentally, and even physically, it may not serve you well. But if you're an O blood type, your body loves it. Like push me some more. And it will thrive on lots of movement. In fact, it's wellness. Your O blood type body depends on lots of movement for healthy lymphatics. And it's just important. So that has been an overview. Now, let me be clear. I said this at the beginning and I'll say it here at the end. I did not come up with this. I am reporting to you what I have experienced, what I have witnessed in my clients, and what I read in 2 different books some years ago. Feel free to check these out if you want to hear more. Eat Right for Your Type. Wonderful book. Totally whacked out in the first couple chapters, in my humble but accurate opinion, as it talks about evolution, and I just don't think like that. Or the second book. Isn't that funny? Let me ask me how I really feel about it. But the second book I love, I love the Christian worldview, which is called Blood Types, Body Types, and You. But it doesn't get as nitty gritty into the actual types it does, but it doesn't go as deeply as the first book that I mentioned. So I'm going to make this stuff up. I'm just reporting it, but I'm reporting it from my own experience, from my own perception as a person, as a wife, as a mom, and then as a practitioner as well. There's something to it. And I hope that this has been helpful for you today. As always, I would love to hear from you. If you heard something today and you just go, what? That just explains a whole bunch of things. Reach out to me. I would love to hear your experience And if you have questions or topics that you'd like to hear more about on this podcast, I want to hear from you too. So feel free to reach out to me. My social media handles are below in the notes, and I would just always love to hear from you. And as always, sharing is caring. If you heard something today that was helpful for you, I'm encouraging you, share it with a friend, share it on social media, and help us get the word out about the encouragement and the peace and the health and the joy that happens right here on this podcast. Thanks again for joining me today, and I will see you very soon.